All right. Okay. So thanks everyone for joining us this morning. We've got a really good conversation lined up about the future of drinks trends, and we're really pleased to have Ben Braithwaite from Seedlip, who's head of creative there, who's joining us, and he's going to talk us through. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but he's going to talk us through the Seedlip story in the background. Touching on drinking habits and what culture means for them, and touching on also some activations and campaigns that they've done and they've got coming up. But before that, we've got Impero's Chief Strategy Officer, Chris, and he's going to be talking you through some research that we've been carrying out recently into people's moods, and specifically how it's driving their drink habits and rituals, and what brands need to consider when producing targeted consumer comms. So it's really kind of, particularly in light of where we are now, we're going to be touching on the target demographics or the people that brands go after and how they've traditionally targeted them, and how that is pretty much up in the air and everything's up for change at the moment because of the world we're currently living in. So I think I'm just going to pass over to you, Chris, straight away, just to kick things off. And I think what I would say also is if you have any questions during Chris's or Ben's talks, then please use the Q&A tab on the Zoom panel, and we'll be having a conversation at the end, just addressing your questions and any other points on the subjects we cover. Thanks very much. Chris, take it away.
Thank you, Corus. So good morning, everyone. Really happy to share some thinking with you today. I think I was described as a veteran of the drinks industry, which either makes me old and forgetful, or hopefully I've got a few battle scars and a few stories to tell. So I'll focus on that bit of it today. There's a picture of me pre-lockdown. The hair's not looking so great now, if I'm honest. Wasn't looking that great back then. So today, what you're going to see is what we describe as the mood of the nation. So how people are thinking and feeling right now. So I think it's something we're all concerned about. We're all understanding the shifting landscape that consumers are living in. And the second thing we're going to dive into is an area we've been studying for some time now, is about mood and how it affects our decision making. And we're going to try and join up those two dots for you. And the third and final is about culture. So if we believe that mood affects our decision making, we're going to show you how culture affects mood. So they're kind of three discrete bits, but I'm going to pull it together hopefully at the very end, and it will all make sense. So a quick question first of all. So I'm going to try and do a bit of live questions and answers here on Zoom, which I've never done before, but I'm curious, has anyone done any of the following in the last 60 days? So that's roughly about the time since we've been in lockdown here in the UK. Have you bought a houseplant, eaten more peanut butter than normal, baked more bread or cakes than normal, or exercised more than normal? So what I want you to do is in the Q&A section in Zoom is just add in 0 if you've done none of them, 1 if you've done 1 of them, 2 if you've done 2 of them, 3 if you've done 3 of them, or 4 if you've done 4 of them. So and we're just curious to see, just generally as a quick survey, who's been up to what. So Corus, I can't see the numbers coming in while I'm sharing my screen, but hopefully we've got a few people just pumping in 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 at the moment.
Yeah, I can see them. 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, none, 1, 4, 4. They're coming in on both channels, but yeah, it seems like most people have been doing quite a few of them.
For a lot of 4s.
Someone said, does eating cake count, not just baking it?
How many? Let me come out. So Q&A.
It's in the Q&A and it's in the chat too.
In the chat. Okay, let's have a look. Chat. So we've got some 2s and 1s, some 3s and 4s. Okay, so a few bits of data coming in. So let me tell you why I'm asking the question, because I think these pieces of events of eating more cake or buying a houseplant could be seemingly unrelated, but we noticed that something was going on, and actually they've got something in common. We're all mood boosting. That's what we're all doing right now. So the reason why we've all probably bought a houseplant is clinical trials show that it releases stress and helps surgical patients recover quicker. We eat As well. So what we found is mood is really significant right now. And we wanted to understand what happens when our mood changes. So a study in 2016 showed just 1 week of forced solitary confinement causes a bad mood. So we're at day 65. So we asked ourselves, how are people feeling right now? And we looked at the YouGov mood tracker. And we compared this time last year to just before lockdown to where we are roughly today. And just to cast your mind back to this time last year, we were right in the throes of Brexit. People weren't feeling that positive back then. It was generally quite a low place. So we are lonelier than ever. So we've got a 25% increase in feeling lonely compared to this time last year to where we are today. Compared to just before lockdown to where we are today, we're 64% more positive than we were. And what's really interesting is we're actually less stressed. So 39% last year to where we are today at 37%. So we found this really interesting. And we kind of throw it out there as a provocation that given the shifts in mood right now, maybe we don't know our consumers as well as we used to. So, you know, consumer pen portraits, our understanding of consumers, relatively fixed. We kind of fix them, lock them, leave them for 2 or 3 years and review them. So we've had this kind of huge cultural shift in how we're feeling caused by COVID and other factors and Brexit previously to that. So we're just throwing out a provocation that maybe we don't know our consumers as well as we should do right now. So what we did is we took some of that information and we built out 5 specific behaviors that we're seeing during COVID as it relates to drinking. And just to give you and just walk you through each of these, and we'll show you what we saw as the bored consumer. They're looking for entertainment, and everyone's talking about TikTok right now. And it's not to say that TikTok wasn't doing very well before, but it's an antidote to boredom. So searches for TikTok are up by 200% in the last 30 days. Then we have the haven seekers. These are people looking for tranquility in troubled times. So as an example, searches for gardening are up 240%. And then there's people looking to have treats and experience seekers. And they're using food as kind of and drink as a short-term happiness boost. So searches for pick and mix, if only Woolworths exist, are up 400%, and sweets are up 200%. And then there's a group of consumers that are reminiscing. They're remembering back to the good old days when we were free to do what we want, you know, to go where we want. As an example, searches for cream tea and afternoon tea are up 750% and 650%. And people are recreating experiences at home. Cocktails are up 400%. And then the last group, which we'll come on to why we think they're the most interesting, is the boosters. They're actively managing mood and health. So things like meditation, couch to 5K are up significantly. So we think this is hopefully relates to what we're seeing today is specific behaviours born from COVID. And we just wanted to look ahead because I think we all sort of understand where we are today in the consumers, but everyone wants to know what's going to happen next. And the next slide hopefully won't scare you, but we are going to talk about recession. In the US, they're talking somewhere between 50 to 100% likelihood of a recession. So what we did is we looked back at the previous financial crash and we looked at the drinking behaviours that specifically we saw during recession times and then compared them to the behaviours that we're seeing currently during COVID. And they're not dissimilar. So people were bored, and they were seeking relaxation after work. So drinking immediately after work increased. People cocooned in their homes. They had more indulgence, so occasional indulgence. So sometimes having luxuries that they wouldn't have done before. And we saw comfort beverages coming through. So this was sweeter, more sickly drinks as people were trying to boost their mood. And also we saw the rise of cocktails. And people started to replicate the restaurant experience in their home. So things like Pizza Express launched in the supermarket. The two recession behaviours that I don't think we've seen is the lower levels of alcohol during the working day. And the reason why you see that typically in recessions is people are worried about their jobs and therefore they want to be on the ball during the day. I think because of lockdown, probably drinking throughout the day is increasing, or at least my levels are. And then we saw thrifty shopping. So this is looking for bargains. This is what gave birth to the Aldi and Lidl of these worlds. And the group that we didn't see in the last recession were the boosters. So we think, you know, there's a lot we can learn from currently what's happening, and there's a lot what we can learn from the previous recession. And what we think is interesting is this group called boosters that is the most significant difference. And if you look at this as a long-term trend, it's always existed. So, you know, things like Twinings launching fortified teas, or Vita Coco launching clean energy drinks. There's been a significant consumer interest in health and well-being as consumers look to manage their mood. And we think this, depending on where the market goes with recessions or not recessions, this will be the significant difference that we're likely to see in the future. So hopefully what I've just established is our mood is changing, and the significant factor we think will be different in the next few years is going to be our well-being and our mood. So what we want to do is just look at the science of how mood affects our decision making. So if we're in certain moods, do we buy more? Do we buy less? What does this mean for brands? So there's a lot of science behind this. So I'll do this quickly to keep it quite light. But first and foremost, mood influences consumers to buy. So when we evaluate new products, we will think more positively when we're in a good mood than when we're in a bad mood. So hopefully that makes sense. But what we'll also do is we'll experience something more positively if we're in a good mood. So you get this bias in post-purchase. So even if you've owned something for a long time, like a great bottle of whiskey or a great wine, whatever it might be, if you're in a good mood, you'll rate the performance and the feel-good factor of that specific purchase. And the third and final bit of science on mood is consumers will share more positively if it's affecting their mood. So on social, a lot of people will talk about, agencies will say, the only reason consumers share is because it says something about them. They don't care about brands. And we're led to believe that people are quite selfish. But actually the third most important reason why people share is they want people to feel something. They want to feel happy, sadness, anger. And what we found is when you share something positively, it actually triggers happiness in 64% of other people. So when brands share something positive, there's an uplift in everyone that shares it. But what we've noticed is, if you look back at the last few years, the tools that we use to start to understand consumers haven't really evolved. We kind of create pen portraits based on occasions and demographics. And this, we feel, kind of missed this power of mood to create contagious ideas that build brands. And we always assume that the consumer is unique. As an agency, we're lucky to get briefs from different brands. And sometimes we look at that target demographic and we look at it and go, isn't it the same person? Are we missing something here? And what we think we're missing, it is the same person. They're just in a different mood. It's still, Ben from Northampton, right? But he's just the same person in a different mood. And this is why typically people are repertoire drinkers. We're not loyal because we're not a unique person. We're just the same person in a different mood. And then what brands do is we assume that the consumer is unique. And then what we do is we create creative ideas and copy and paste them to target the same person on a different day. So we don't adjust the creative based on how people are thinking and feeling at that time. So what we decided to do is create a mood model. It's a simple idea, but we think it's pretty powerful, and we're going to share it with you guys, first of all, here today, and hopefully you'll find it quite exciting. So we found that there's 7 basic moods that exist, so there's no surprise. And the obvious thing to do is, well, all marketing should be about happiness. Let's just create some happiness. And it doesn't get more sophisticated than that. But when you delve into the moods that exist, beyond the basic ones, there's a further 41, which are subdivided into a further 81 moods. So whether that's I'm bored and I'm indifferent, or I'm angry, aggressive, and I feel provoked. these are all actually how the human brain is able to recognize different moods of other people and respond to that. And when we looked at some of the most successful non-alcoholic launches over the last few years, what we realized is they weren't necessarily always touching an occasion, or they weren't just tapping into a trend of, some functional health claim. They were targeting moods. So Recess is a hemp brand out in the US that's doing very well. And it targets the feeling of feeling overwhelmed. The name in itself, the color palette, everything about this product is designed to make you feel relaxed. Aperol Spritz, obviously huge success over a number of years. And I know a lot of people would say, hold on a sec, that's an occasion strategy. They were all after the aperitif moment. But they actually had a challenge outside the peak summer season. So part of the strategy is all about eagerness. It starts with Aperol Spritz is all about a sentiment to try, to be first, to have eagerness, which is a specific mood. And when we think about low alcoholic beer, it's people like Brewdog and their provocations that they throw out there. It's not just the brand being provocative. They understand that the consumer doesn't want to be judged. I want to feel empowered, and I want my mood to be non-judgmental. And another one from Camden, that's also low alcohol, is we think about drinking on a Monday and a Tuesday night and the guilt associated with that. I don't want to feel embarrassed on a Tuesday night. I just want a beer. So this is really clear. It's any day lager, and they're really leaning overtly into that strategy. And finally, another one from the US that I think will be huge in the next few years is called Mood 33. It's another hemp-based drink. And they obviously couldn't quite decide which mood that they wanted to go after. So they went after a range: joy, passion, calm, peace. And they target a range of moods and have a portfolio strategy. So we think mood's pretty powerful, and we've seen that some of the biggest launches thus far have been informed by a mood strategy. And we believe the brain is pretty adept at recognizing different moods and emotions. You don't have to just create communication and product ideas based on simple happiness. So to give you an idea of our ability to understand emotions is looking at the emoji Unicode standard. This is as of March 2020. So a few fun stats for you. 1 in 100 tweets sent in April contain the pleading face. Faces with tears of joy is the most used on Twitter right now. And smiling face with hearts appeared in about 0.5% of all messages sent globally. So we not only understand how emotions are, how to use them, but we understand how to read them. So we think the provocation we're going to throw out there is, let's start using emotions to build brands, and to understand how that we can use moods to affect decision making. And an example I'd love to share here, I know it's not from the alcohol and a drink sector, but is Snickers, because they do a brilliant job at turning a negative mood into a positive. So this is a campaign from India, where students are stressed out during exam times and there's a lot of pressure. So they created a campaign idea around exams can be stressful, don't let hunger add to it. So the whole TVC and the film created tapped into this mood. That they created a new range of chocolate bars, or repackaged them, called Keep Calm, or a various messaging. So you don't always have to focus on a negative. You can turn it into a positive. So you don't have to focus on a positive. You can turn a negative into a positive. Now, the third and final bit of the puzzle. Hopefully, I've established that our moods are shifting. Mood will affect our decision making. And the third and final bit I would like to share with you is, if we can understand culture, we can use it to our advantage to affect our mood. So there was a scientific experiment done over a number of years called the infamous pink cell test. And if you haven't heard of this, this is a test where they try and paint the cells of inmates in prisons different colors to see if it affects their moods. And it's been tried and tested, proved, disproved a number of times. And it was recreated in 2016 by this very smart person, and said, hold on a sec, let's just look at the specific shade of pink that we paint a cell. And what they understood over 4 years of study is, using the specific shade of calm pink, which is the one in the bottom left-hand corner, people felt less aggression and more relaxed. So there's a real subtlety to it. So studies before didn't even think about what color pink. So the bright pinks, the girly pinks, actually infuriated inmates. The soft calming pinks actually calmed them down. Now, why am I telling you all about the color pink? Well, the reason I want to tell you a little bit more is pink wasn't always associated with femininity. So 16th, 17th hundreds, it was actually a color for boys and girls. And it was only after World War II that we decided that it should be associated with girls and not boys. Now, I've taken 2 points in time quite far apart to show you that the meaning and the culture associated with just as simple as something like color can change. And what we believe is, to understand how we can affect someone's mood, we need to understand the speed of culture. Now, in some categories, culture is ever changing and very, very volatile, and others are timeless. So timeless category might be champagne. You know, you tap into insights and ideas that are literally timeless. Watches is another example. However, in some categories, let's say light beer, you're tapping into music and celebrity culture and sport. And this is an ever-changing culture. So we believe we have to understand the speed of culture. And agencies and clients, their typical tool to understand culture and consumers is things like this: pen portraits, documents that are structured, written as snappy sentences. And overall, we believe they're not an actually great tool to capture consumer meaning and to capture culture. Because they turn images into words, and those words have very little impact actually, because we all take out different meanings and different associations. So what we believe to understand culture you need to do is stop pointing it directly at the consumer. You know, Sarah, 33, here's her demographics. We need to understand the world that they live in, the culture she exists in, and understand the influences that are in her life, but not just the influences, the specific meaning that she gives them and how it affects her mood. So I want to leave you with this simple model. If you followed my line of thought today, mood is significant. It will affect our decision making. And if we want to affect someone's mood, we need to understand culture. And the culture that we understand, if we can extract out the meaning it gives someone's that we're targeting, we can affect their mood. So simply, culture equals meaning equals mood. So I've got a couple of key takeaways today for you. So 5 thoughts to leave you with. The future of drinks marketing and product development, we think, should move away from fixed pen portraits. This idea that they are static and they don't move. And we should think about a consumer that just occupies a context and a specific mood that we're considering. The third is discover who your consumer is in a post-COVID world. We've hopefully shown that consumer sentiment has shifted a lot, and now might be a good time to rediscover who your new consumer is. Maybe you've brought in a new, more interested consumer base into your category. Maybe it's shifted completely. The third is we think we can occupy a specific mood and build the brand around this. So we're never going to dismiss occasion and value segmentation. Of course, that's critical. But let's think about specific moods and targeting that to each brand. The fourth thing we think we can do is build a portfolio strategy. Again, the idea of this is beyond occasion and value, to look at making sure that we get different products that segment to different moods. And I think Camden Town is fantastic at doing this at the moment. And the fifth thing to leave you with is, if we can understand culture, culture will allow us to understanding the meaning, and that will allow us to inform our mood. And we can use this to inform our creative strategy. So the last chart from me is culture equals meaning equals mood. Hopefully that gives food for thought for the rest of the day on how to think about your current advertising and marketing. Coris, shall I hand across to you? And do you want to do questions now, or we'll hand across to?
No, I think we'll hand across to Ben,
cool.
and then we'll have questions at the end. We had one about microdosing, but I think that's a good one to kick things off with once Ben's taking us through his presentation.
Cool. Thanks, Chris.
No worries, Ben.
Is that working?
Yep.
So I just wanted to give a quick overview of the Seedlip story so far. A little bit about the NA category as a whole, a bit into our products and what we've got next in the Seedlip pipeline. So we've got a pretty simple mission at Seedlip, which is just to change the way the world drinks and solve the dilemma of what to drink when you're not drinking. And essentially to rid the world of these sugary, sweet mocktails, which are childish, don't go with food, don't go with many occasions, and are and just aren't that sophisticated drink that people are now looking for. Story so far. So this is Ben in a little tractor when he was a young boy. His family have been farming up in Lincolnshire for 320 years. And Ben's blood pretty much runs green. He goes by the sort of mantra of the art of nature, where he sees beauty in all aspects of nature, animals, fauna and flora, which guides a lot of what we do at Seedlip. Ben, before starting Seedlip, had his own design agency where he worked on a few brands such as these. Lives in a little cottage in the woods with his dogs, this one here. And it was in this cottage in the woods where he really became obsessed with growing unique herbs, finding different flavor profiles, which he learnt about when he was at cookery school in London. And so he's a real tinkerer, and he does painting and taxidermy, and alongside growing all his weird and wonderful herbs, he looked up a book called he came across a book called The Art of Distillation, written in 1651. And in this book documented alcoholic and non-alcoholic herbal remedies. And Ben, being the tinkerer that he is, decided to give it a go himself. So started experimenting with all of his little herbs and bits and bobs he'd been growing in his garden. I think he also tried to distill pebbles at one stage to capture the essence of a pebble. But just started tinkering around and essentially he wanted to initially create 3 products in 2 different sizes each. And over the period of 2 years of research and development, he eventually got to 1 product and thought this would be quite fun to try and that would be job done for him. He did eventually get his 1 product together and launched into Selfridges, which is when things really took a step change with Seedlip and Ben, and it suddenly changed from him just wanting it to get on farmers markets and that sort of things to being in high demand from all of London's top Michelin star restaurants. This is him on his way to Selfridges, where he hand labeled the first 1,000 bottles, which sold out in 3 weeks. The next 1,000 he sold out in 3 days, and the next 1,000 sold out in 30 minutes. And that was when things really started to grow, and the category as a whole started to shift, and people's eyebrows were raised as to the change in drinking habits that were rapidly happening. Fast forward a couple of years, there's now 80 employees at Seedlip. We're available in 32 countries. We're in 300 Michelin-star restaurants and 7 of the top 10 best cocktail bars in the world. So a little bit about the category. So when Ben first started growing herbs and playing with a still, it was in 2013, before any kind of shift in drinking habits and before the NA category started to be taken remotely seriously. But in 2015, since Seedlip launched, there were some big titles starting to pick up on this change, including Telegraph, and James Morgan, who compiled the Hakkasan NA drinks menu, said that 61% of consumers want better choice when it comes to non-alcoholic drinks, while 58% of British adults are drinking more no and low ABV drinks than last year. Premiumization is a real driving force behind all of this. So the volume of alcohol consumed is actually down, but the value of the alcohol consumed is up by 3%. In 2018, Britain bought 40.6 million pints fewer than they did in 2017, but the overall spend on those pints was 279 million more than the year before. And the top 3 occasions for why people might be drinking no or low. Number 1 is designated driver. And interestingly, number 2 was just people wanting to try, and wanting to give the no and low drinks on offer a go. Whereas previously it was either you just go straight for the lime and soda, or just not bother going to the pub or event that was going on. And 21% just wanted to reduce their alcohol intake. So we've got 3 spirits currently with Seedlip: Garden 108, Grove 42, and Spice 94. Garden 108 is very pea driven. Ben's family up in Lincolnshire grow peas, and the snap pea is our real kind of guiding plant is our hero. So when I first joined Seedlip, we actually all went up to Ben's farm and hand-picked, I think, 4 tons of snap peas that then went into the next year's Garden 108 batches. Very herbal: peas, hay, rosemary, thyme, spearmint, and hops. And the 108 refers to the average number of days it takes to sow, grow, and pick the peas. And a Garden 108 and tonic. Our serve strategy has always been push the Seedlip and tonic. It's very simple. It resonates with people. Seedlip's quite a new thing for people to get their heads around. So just simply having that kind of with tonic and ice reference point when we were starting made getting people understand what Seedlip is and how to use it very simple. Our next one is Grove 42, our citrus-driven skew, with 3 types of orange peel, ginger, lemongrass, and lemon. And the 42 refers to the year 1542, when the colour orange was first used to describe the colour as well as the fruit. And there's our Seedlip Grove, and Tonic. And then we have Spice 94, which is very aromatic. We pick all our peas, all our allspice berries from Jamaica, from a soul farmer called Mr. Sherlock. The allspice berry is the lead plant in Spice 94, which gives it a very clovey, woody character. The 94 in Spice 94 refers to when Christopher Columbus discovered the allspice berries in Jamaica in 1494, where we exclusively source ours from. And there's Spice 94 and Tonic. So Seedlip's used in lots of other NA drinks, not just the Seedlip and Tonics. Two of our most favorites are the Espresso Martino and the Negroni. Espresso made with Seedlip spice and the Negroni made with Seedlip, 1 part Seedlip and 2 parts Acorn, which is our sister brand Acorn aperitifs. A little insight into what we've got in the pipeline at Seedlip. Got new SKUs. Harvest 36 is actually already in existence. We've released limited batches of it at World's 50 Best, but haven't been able to produce large batches of it just yet. We launched Acorn aperitifs just over a year ago, which to try and sort of Seedlip very much gives you a seat at the bar. Acorn very much gives you a seat at the table. So much easier to pair with food. You can liken them to wines. We launched our RTD Negroni last year. So that's 1 part Seedlip spice, 1 part Acorn bitter, and 1 part Acorn aromatic. This is at the moment just exclusively sold Selfridges on our website, but has proved extremely popular. We also launched our Seedlip and Tonic RTDs last year. This is Beasley Farm, which is up on Ben's farm in Lincolnshire, which is going to be our kind of shrine to nature and our experimental garden laboratory, where we'll have a little nursery garden and grow experimental plants and have a distillery set up inside it and come up with new and wonderful NA liquids. And that chap is holding a Seedlip, which is what they used to sow seeds back in the 1600s, which inspired the name Seedlip. And that is all from me.
Great. Thanks very much, Ben. So I guess one of the things I was thinking about just when ahead of this, just because it's made such an impact, and I didn't know the history to that detail that you've just mentioned there. But you've created the category and you've innovated throughout to bring consumers new things. What do you think is the greatest challenge just to ensure that you continue to lead the category? What drives the thinking inside, from starting from an initial point where it was just to create one product and then innovating through those different products you talked to us now? What continues to drive innovation, or do you see the biggest challenge now that the category's been set and you're leading the category?
Yeah, I think it's just that constant thrive to get past this first step of that overall approach to what is normal. So you know, it's still kind of the case where any celebration, any occasion, going out is still all around alcohol. And if you're not drinking and you're at those occasions, you're seen as the sort of what's wrong with you, or that's not normal. It's our challenge is just to keep trying to shift that balance of what is normal, and sort of switch it around to, if you're the host or if you're the bar or wherever it is, and you don't have that sophisticated non-alcoholic alternative, then are they the ones who aren't normal? And it's that kind of wider shift that we keep trying to build and grow and push, with all sorts of, you've got the Seedlip and Tonic and the Negroni and the RTD and all these different products for different occasions. You know, the S&T, Seedlip and Tonic, RTDs, perfect for picnics. Seedlip's perfect for that Michelin star restaurant, and just sort of pushing that message of what is normal.
Seems like when you might have started, and teetotalers might have been the target market, but it seems like the target market for you now is just broad. Anyone who's not drinking on that particular occasion. With that in mind, what's the sort of strategy behind pushing into RTDs? Because obviously Seedlip's got that beautiful aesthetic. It's all, you can see it from a mile away. Really strong packaging. It just screams, you know, garden to glass, or as you used to say, seed to lip sort of thing. Yeah. And then you've moved into RTDs. Is that a widening of possible audience strategy, or is there a demand from the on-trade that's pushed that?
It was more just around our thinking of, well, if people are, you know, if people are going out to bars and restaurants, and we've kind of covered that, like, just because they're not drinking, they shouldn't have as good experience as everyone else, then why should people going for picnics or getting on the East Coast Main Line from Edinburgh to London, when everyone else is having a nice alcoholic beverage and a picnic and the rest of it? But just because someone's not drinking in those occasions doesn't mean they should instantly have to just go for the orange juice or the Coca-Cola.
Right.
And trying to sort of put any occasion on the same sort of playing field of, well, anybody at any occasion should be able to get their hands on a sophisticated, grown-up alternative.
Yeah, and that seems to be, like, from the outside looking in, what obviously you guys have really nailed is that giving that sophisticated alternative. As you say, those horrible sugary, mock cocktails is just, no one's going to impress anyone ordering one of those, are they? They look like they're for children. So,
yeah.
So we got a question here from Blondine saying, what's the most successful channel for your RTDs?
They're only really in one channel at the moment, in grocery. So Waitrose, really. But I guess we are launching very soon in SSP and in those kind of little pop-in supermarkets in train stations, where we see they should hopefully be the best channel for the RTDs there, as we try and tap into the kind of the traveling option. Because the trouble is, at the moment, they don't necessarily live in fridges in where they are stocked, so people would have to buy them, cool them down to then use them. But if they're stocked in fridges in train stations, in the sort of grab and go mentality.
So the off trade is maybe not quite caught on to the larger trend there, and there's a bit of catch up that we need to do to start moving them into the right positions in the shop.
Yeah, which I mean, we've seen huge changes over the last few years in the off trade of, you know, where when we first started it was just us and alcohol brands. There's now us and lots of other non-alcoholic spirit brands, all the rest of it, and supermarkets are slowly, you know, having our own no and low sections. So yeah, they've come a hell of a long way.
And you mentioned earlier on just about the challenge about normalising not the option to not drink. How far do you feel you're down that path, and how far do you feel there is yet to go? I mean, you've just mentioned that you know the options. There's already many more there. You know, anecdotally, I would say that it's a lot more acceptable now, but I guess that context can change very much just around the country. So it's
yeah. We always say that. I mean, we've only literally just scratched the surface of what's possible, and it's literally only 5 past midnight in the world of Seedlip, and we've only just started going. And now that the NA category as a whole has sort of changed from just a few products and a few brands and potentially, you know, a flash in the pan, it's now its own ecosystem, and there's journalists and there's podcasts and all the rest of it building this kind of wider category around the NA drinks. But yeah, we've started growing our team in Australia and the US, where there's all sorts of new possibilities out there. We're always thinking of MPDs, and yeah, as I said, there's all the new products and brands joining the category is only building that ecosystem. And
right. So the category growth is obviously paying off because you've got the lion's share of the category.
Yeah, I mean, it's all good for everyone, so long as the level of quality of the liquids is all good.
Yeah. There's a question here which I think is quite a good one. Is what has been your marketing strategy apart from, you know, having a really distinct product and packaging and so on? Has it been basically just all about the trade, or I know you've done some mass advertising this year?
Yeah, I mean, in year 1 and 2, it was very much gut led, based on our intuitions and what we felt was right for the brand. And we were able to make quick decisions and act fast. So, you know, things like realizing Seedlip might be great for pregnant women. Let's go and try this pregnancy event. Seedlip's quite good for designated drivers. Let's go and try Goodwood. And so year 1 and 2 was very much just what we in the team felt was right for the brand and what our gut instinct told us. Mm-hmm. And very much just pushing that Seedlip and tonic serve. Trying to sort of own in the mind what to drink when you're not drinking, and then own in the hand the Seedlip and tonic. And then, yeah, as you touched on, in December last year, January this year, we launched our first out-of-home campaign called Drink to the Future, where we sort of reached this point where Seedlip we were available nationally, off trade and on trade, but was Seedlip the brand, and was Seedlip and tonics front of mind with the consumer nationally? So we wanted to do above the line in Manchester, Birmingham and London, and 100 Waitrose stores, digital 6 screens in the car parks, and try and just push that Seedlip and tonic occasion, which went through many iterations, as I'm sure you guys would know how these things come to life. but ended up on the line "Drink to the Future," which, you know, is drink to the future of your health, drink to the future of new habits, innovation. It was New Year, your family, drinking to the future of this change in drinking trends. And we decided to lead that. So the only SKU we had in the campaign was Grove as our recruiter SKU, which we feel resonates with the average consumer most. Just, it's a straightforward citrus-led SKU. And the other two can sometimes be a bit daunting or hard to understand.
There's a question here, back to the sort of mood discussion. It asks about, you know, the CBD space is largely based on moods, although this is in conflict with the FSA, allowing, you know, obviously, it's the same with alcoholic drinks, you can't claim that they change mood for the better. So are they just flaunting the rules, or can you explain how to be compliant with the EFSA while still promoting moods, and, you know, such as the CBD brands that you showed, Chris?
Yeah. So that, as far as I understand from a legal point of view, the EFSA have yet to approve a single CBD brand, and they're all classified as a novel food, which means they have to go through, you know, it's a new food in human consumption. So they're not saying yes to anything at the moment, but I would draw our learnings from Portman Group, which have obviously been established a lot longer in terms of how they regulate alcohol. So the general rule within alcohol and mood is about not showing transformation. So we can't depict happy or sad to happy. That is not that's not in line with the regulations. But what we can do is show happy, right? Or we can show optimism, like Drink to the Future maybe is talking to. So we can depict a mood, but humans and, you know, consumers have to self-identify. We can't show that this product will make you suddenly feel different by drinking it. So that's at least within alcohol, that's the distinctive difference. And you know, the specifics on the FSA at the moment, I don't think it's yet clear. And there probably is some blatant flaunting of the category. And eventually it will have to self-regulate. Otherwise, they'll get fines. And that's why most alcoholic companies have the Portman Group, but they also have their own internal legal teams, and they have their own strict code of conduct that they adhere to. So each category, each company needs to decide their moral standing on using such sophisticated techniques as mood targeting.
And sort of thinking about the sort of the growth in CBD category, the better for you movement with low and no alcohol, obviously the removing of sugar, which is all coming, you know, heavy-handed by the law, or self exercising by the big brands and so on, and the movement generally away from sort of brand ingredients that, you know, have a big impact on the world, to ones, you know, like plant power and meat-free Mondays and sort of movements like this. Have you, in regards to CEDAP, looked beyond simply the taste and looked at plants with benefits, if you like, CBD being the obvious one, but rather than, you know, obviously alcohol gives you somewhat of a high, but it's also got quite a sophisticated taste that comes with it. So have you looked at plants beyond just, you know, the ones that add the flavour, that adds a benefit or function to the drink as well? Or is that an area that CEDAP doesn't feel is right for their brand?
No, we've never looked into any plant that would add anything to the drink other than flavour. In short,
Yeah.
I guess we do things like our pop-up shop and the events we go to. We try and make it as beautiful and turn it into a much wider experience, which you'd hope would bring those kind of natural mood lifting anyway, without adding any CBD or anything to the liquid. So from a kind of experience point of view, we hope Seedlip would do that anyway. But no, we don't. We haven't looked into any other plants that may mood alter.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that ties in with what someone had asked about how other brands are using chili to, I guess, replicate the burn sensation for drinks. So that's, I guess you've answered that. That's not something you guys are looking to do.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, Grove, for example, has a little bit of Japanese Sancho peppercorn, which just gives a slight tingle.
I know we're probably getting close to time, but I think there's another interesting question here about audiences for the non-alcoholic category. Someone's asked if they're suggesting it feels like Seedlip is geared mainly towards women. Is there an ambition to target women over men, or like? And I'd probably add to that is if it is going after women, do you know what your actual drinking consumer pool looks like? Because there's a very famous case study of an Australian credit card company that was all designed for women. A few years ago, it seems a very dated concept, but and all the marketing was geared towards women. When they looked at the consumer base, it was 50-50 men and women. So it was kind of what they sold and what people who actually bought it was a bit different.
Yeah, we don't particularly target women over or female over male. I think it's about 60-40, leaning towards the female. I think generally that's down to just, quite a lot of, so I see a demographic sort of the 25 to 65-ish, over indexing on 35 to 65. And I think there's a lot of males within that category who are of that sort of ilk that would just turn their nose up at something like a grown-up non-alcoholic spirit if they're out in a pub, of that sort of male thing. And I think females are more maybe open to things like Seedlip, and perhaps it is. I don't think Seedlip necessarily appeals to females more than males from its packaging. But we kind of split our consumer down to two groups of the aunts and the can'ts. The aunts are the kind of midweek moderators, and they seek flavor over alcohol. And the can'ts are the designated drivers, allergies, religious reasons, of which, equal amounts of male and females fall into.
Wow. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, looking at the packaging and the branding and so on, I wouldn't necessarily see it skewed for women, but I could understand why, there might be that sort of tonic drink that men often traditionally anyway, whether it's true or not anymore, go for harder spirits and sort of brown spirits, more traditional. Yeah. There's one more question, which I think is just a quick one, which people are probably dying to know. How much with COVID, you mentioned it just before the call started. What's the shift been like towards, obviously, on-trade is unfortunately dead. What's the shift been like to the e-commerce sites and sort of the volume shift? And have you found that the volumes have held up and it's just been about being quick to pivot towards e-trade and e-commerce and so on, or has it been sort of more fundamentally difficult to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, most of our business comes from the off-trade anyway. So I mean, groceries had a good uplift. E-com, we were very lucky. Just before, in the lead up to kind of COVID, we were planning an ATL with Amazon, which pretty much turned on as lockdown was enforced, which has proved very, very good for us. And then our web sales have been good. But a lot of big shift towards Amazon, building our page. As I said earlier, we've, people in our events teams are now pretty much on the Amazon team or the RTD team. And, with been trying to utilize. There's a lot of creative people in Seedlip with, you know, good eyes, and if they've got a good iPhone, they're able to take some pretty good content. So no, it's been good on Amazon in particular.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. So it's Amazon really is the juggernaut which people are heading to, and getting the right Amazon strategies.
Yeah.
Pretty important for launching new drinks, especially in COVID.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I think we've seen that with a few of our other drinks clients as well, how they've moved, even to the latter part last year, moving to an Amazon strategy really has kind of given them stronger visibility and increased their sales as well. So I think it's 11 o'clock now, so I think it's good to kind of call a day on this. It's been really great discussion. I want to thank you again, Ben, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I also want to thank all the people who joined in on the webinar and intended to ask a question. If there are any other questions you want to ask, then feel free to drop me an email. My name's Coris. My email address is coris, C-O-R-I-S, @weareimpero.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts, any feedback on the webinar itself, and any topics that would be particularly of interest that we could consider putting together for future webinars. So thanks again to everyone, and look forward to running another session like this again soon.